Welcome to The Voter's Voice, where we lay out the bills and you decide if they make sense.
Today, we're plunging into the fascinating and, let's be honest, often contentious history of how California draws its political lines. For anyone who's ever, scratched their head looking at one of those really oddly shaped districts, let's just quickly define a core concept. Gerrymandering.
Right.
It's basically the practice of manipulating electoral district boundaries to, create an unfair advantage for one political party or group.
Exactly. And California's journey here, it's quite a story.
It really is. It's a wild ride, swinging from some of the most bizarrely shaped districts you can imagine to a groundbreaking citizen-led commission. And now, it faces this unprecedented challenge. It's a story that, really reveals this long conflict between raw political power and the electorate's demand for fair representation. We've got a stack of sources here to guide us through California's evolution, revealing the why and how behind these shifts.
So our mission in this deep dive is to explore how California went from being, frankly, infamous for manipulated maps to becoming a kind of model for independent redistricting, and why that hard-won model is now under, significant threat. You'll understand the true stakes of this crucial aspect of democracy.
Okay, so let's cast our minds back then to the bad old days, as you might call them, before California was known for independent redistricting.
Yeah.
This was an era absolutely defined by overt, often quite acrimonious partisan battles over map making.
And what becomes immediately clear from our sources is just how deeply ingrained partisan control was. I mean, take the period after the 1980 census.
Right.
California gained 2 new congressional districts, bringing its total up to 45. The ruling Democrats, who controlled both houses of the legislature and the governorship, they saw this as a golden opportunity, really, to maximize their advantage.
So they went for it.
Oh, they did. The redistricting plan was, notoriously engineered by Democratic Congressman Philip Burton and State Assembly Speaker Willie Brown. Their explicit goal was to create 5 new, safe Democratic seats.
And this wasn't subtle, was it? We're not talking about just nudging lines here and there.
Oh, far from subtle. Congressman Burton famously described his creation as my contribution to modern art.
Wow.
And one district apparently had a shocking 385 sides. Just illustrates the extreme contortions they went to.
385 sides.
Yeah. So this act of, extreme partisan gerrymandering, it triggered a powerful voter backlash. Republicans successfully placed a veto referendum on the June 1982 ballot.
Okay, so that's basically a direct public vote to overturn a law.
Exactly. And California voters overwhelmingly rejected the legislature's plan.
So the voters spoke, they rejected the maps. That should have been the end of it, surely.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But no, not even close. The political drama just intensified.
Oh.
A majority of the California Supreme Court justices, who were appointed by then-Governor Jerry Brown, they issued this sharply fractured ruling and, controversially, ordered the rejected districts to be used anyway in the November election.
Wait, use the maps the voters just rejected?
Yes, claiming it was the only, quote, practicable option. And this judicial override, it had a profound impact. Despite winning only 49.9% of the statewide vote, Democrats secured a remarkable 60% of the congressional seats.
Wow.
And what's more, following the election, Governor Brown, in one of his final acts, called an extraordinary legislative session to sign the very redistricting plan the electorate had just rejected into law.
That's quite something. So for you, the voter, listening to this, imagine your choice feeling almost irrelevant because the lines were drawn specifically to ensure predictable outcomes.
Exactly.
But then something else happened, right? What happens when the political parties stop fighting each other for power and instead agree to protect themselves?
Yes. This is where a really critical insight emerges from the sources. By the 2000s, California saw this fundamental shift away from that overt partisan warfare,
right,
to what became known as a mutually agreed upon incumbent protection plan.
Incumbent protection.
Yeah. The objective for both Democrats and Republicans was not really to aggressively expand partisan power anymore, but to protect the status quo, draw non-competitive, safe districts for the existing incumbents.
So it wasn't partisan fighting, it was more like an elite consensus against the voters.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
For the incumbents, it was stable, it was secure.
Right.
But for the voters, the consequences were dire.
How so?
The resulting electoral map was meticulously designed to make sure districts were overwhelmingly dominated by one party or the other. Very few could be considered genuinely competitive.
Gotcha.
And look at the data from the 2004 election cycle. A win by a margin of less than 55% of the vote. Exceptionally rare. Only 5 out of 80 assembly districts, 2 out of 39 Senate districts.
And Congress.
In congressional races, 0. Not a single seat changed hands in that election.
0. Wow.
Yeah, it created this political landscape just devoid of electoral accountability. It effectively insulated elected officials from, the will of the voters.
Okay, that sounds less like a stable system and more like a ticking time bomb for democracy. That level of public frustration couldn't last forever.
Right.
So the stage was set for a radical transformation, but this wasn't an overnight success, was it? I mean, it took decades.
Oh, not at all. The successful creation of an independent redistricting commission in California, it was really the culmination of a multi-decade struggle. You had early reform efforts like Proposition 14 back in '82.
Which failed.
Or the 1984 Sebastiani plan that got struck down by the court before it even reached the ballot. And then, as you mentioned, Governor Schwarzenegger's 2005 initiative, Prop 77, putting it in the hands of retired judges.
Also failed.
But they all sort of laid the groundwork, showed this enduring public desire for a fairer system.
So after decades of trying, what finally broke through? What allowed this citizen-led reform to actually take hold?
Well, that widespread dissatisfaction with those non-competitive maps of the 2000s, that provided the critical momentum. The breakthrough finally came with the Voters' First Act.
Okay.
It was placed on the ballot as Proposition 11 in November 2008, championed by a coalition led by California Common Cause.
And what did Prop 11 do?
It was landmark legislation. It created a new 14-member California Citizens Redistricting Commission, the CCRC, and critically, it stripped the state legislature of its power to draw district lines for the state assembly, state senate, and the Board of Equalization.
And it passed, but I heard it was really close.
Correct. Very narrow margin, 50.9% to 49.1%.
Wow.
Which, indicated that while people wanted change, there was still significant skepticism about this new, untested model. But here's the strategic masterstroke. They didn't stop there.
Okay, so how did they build on that? How did they convince more voters, especially after such a tight win?
Well, the success of Prop 11, even though narrow, it created this crucial opportunity. So 2 years later, proponents went back to the ballot with Proposition 20 in 2010.
Right.
This was the voters' first act for Congress. It sought to expand the CCRC's authority to include redrawing federal congressional districts, too.
Ah, the federal level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The rationale was pretty simple. Stop elected representatives from drawing, quote, districts that virtually guarantee members of Congress get reelected even when they don't listen to voters.
Makes sense.
And what's key here is this two-step process. First, prove the model works on a smaller scale with state districts.
Build trust.
Build trust, exactly. Build public confidence. And then go for the more ambitious proposal for congressional maps. And it worked. Prop 20 passed with a much more convincing majority, 61.2% of the vote.
That's a huge jump in support.
It really was. A strategic success.
So California now has this independent commission, the CCRC. How is it actually designed to be nonpartisan? I mean, what does it look like behind the scenes, and how are these commissioners picked to ensure that independence?
Yeah, the critical element here is how meticulously designed the whole structure and process are, specifically to eliminate that partisan influence. It's a 14-member body, intentionally composed of 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 4 individuals affiliated with neither of the 2 largest parties. So that partisan balance is fundamental.
5, 5, and 4. Got
Yeah,
it.
and the selection process itself, it's rigorously multi-layered. It starts with a panel of independent auditors reviewing thousands of applications.
Wow, thousands.
Yep. They pick the 120 most qualified, interview them, narrow it down to 60. Then the legislature gets a limited chance to remove some applicants.
Limited, though.
Very limited. And from the remaining pool, the state auditor randomly selects the first 8 commissioners, 3 Dems, 3 Reps, 2 unaffiliated. And then crucially, those 8 commissioners choose the remaining 6 to complete the 14 members.
So the commissioners themselves pick the final members.
That's right. It's this really elaborate multi-stage process designed to prioritize independence at every single step. Makes it incredibly difficult for any single political force to dominate.
Okay, so that's the who. What about the how? What guides their work?
Right. Beyond the selection, the CCRC's work is guided by a specific, legally mandated hierarchy of criteria. This is a dramatic shift from the old days of secret deals.
What are the criteria?
Okay, in order of priority. 1, equal population. Districts have to have roughly equal populations. That's the one person, one vote principle from the Constitution.
Makes sense.
2, Voting Rights Act compliance. Got to make sure minority groups have an equal chance to elect candidates they choose.
Also crucial.
3, contiguity. Districts must be a single connected geographic area, no islands.
Okay.
4, preservation of communities of interest. This is a big one. Respecting the geographic integrity of local communities, cities, counties. And crucially, the law explicitly defines a community of interest based on shared social and economic interests, but explicitly prohibits defining them by relationships with political parties, incumbents, or candidates. That's the core of its independence.
Gotcha. Keep politics out of defining communities.
Exactly. And finally, 5, geographic compactness. Districts should be, reasonably compact in shape, not like that 385-sided modern art.
Right. This sounds incredibly transparent compared to the past. Are there ways for, the public, for you listening, to get involved, especially with defining those communities of interest?
Absolutely. Public participation is actually a core component of the CCRC's mandate. They have to conduct an open and transparent process, hold public hearings, accept public comments, both before and after drafting maps.
That seems vital.
It's essential, especially because the census doesn't collect data on communities of interest. So they rely on public input. For example, in the 2011 cycle alone, they held 34 public meetings, over 2,700 people participated, and they got another 20,000 written comments.
It's a lot of input.
It is. A stark contrast to the old closed-door methods. Now, for a bit of nuance here, while the process is designed to be nonpartisan, it's not totally immune to partisan interests trying to, influence things. There were reports alleging the California Democratic Party tried to manipulate the public input process by coordinating testimony during hearings. The commission acknowledged that partisan interests are kind of in inevitability, but they denied any undue influence. It highlights an important insight, though.
Which is?
The CCRC reforms successfully took the act of drawing districts away from politicians. But it couldn't totally remove partisan interest from the broader political ecosystem. The fight just moved, from a direct power grab to maybe a more subtle attempt to influence this transparent, nonpartisan body.
Interesting distinction. So after all that effort, the commission is up and running. What were the actual results? Looking at the first 2 cycles after the 2010 and 2020 censuses, did these reforms actually make a difference for you, the voter, in terms of fairness, competition?
Well, the consensus among many political analysts is, the CCRC's maps have been a pretty significant success, especially in creating a more competitive and fair political landscape.
Okay.
The work, the maps, they stand in stark contrast to those backroom deals. The process was defined by transparency, extensive public hearings, and for the 2021 cycle, the commission's final maps were actually approved with unanimous support from all 14 commissioners.
Unanimous. That's impressive.
It is. The reform is widely credited with taking a significant step toward ending gerrymandering in California. By sticking to those non-political criteria, the commission created districts that are just more logical, more representative of their communities.
And more competitive.
And as a result, yes, more competitive. California is now actually considered one of the most competitive states for House of Representatives seats. That's a remarkable change from the old incumbent protection era.
So incumbents can lose now.
Exactly. The CCRC's maps made it possible for an incumbent to be defeated, which was, frankly, a rarity under the previous system. It's also worth noting the 2020 census threw in a new challenge.
Oh.
It was the first time in California's entire history that the state didn't increase its congressional delegation. It actually lost a seat for the first time since the 1920s.
Huh. Didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
But, okay, if it's more competitive, why do I still hear some critics arguing these maps are somehow skewed unfairly towards Democrats? How can both things be true?
Right. This reveals a really critical insight, and it gets to the nuance of what fair means here. The CCRC's mandate isn't to engineer a specific partisan outcome.
Okay.
It's not trying to create an equal number of competitive races, necessarily. Its purpose is simply to follow that strict, ranked set of nonpartisan criteria respecting communities, cities, counties, etc.
Right, the list you gave.
Exactly. Now, some critics do point out, correctly, that Republicans hold, I think it's just 17% of California's 52 House seats, even though they won nearly 40% of the statewide vote in the last election.
So that sounds unbalanced?
It does on the surface. However, you have to consider California's population distribution. Democratic voters tend to be heavily concentrated in urban centers and along the coast.
Mm-hmm.
So if you draw a map logically, following those nonpartisan criteria, respecting those communities, it's likely it will still favor Democrats overall in terms of seat count. That reflects the state's political geography.
Ah, okay. So the measure of success isn't necessarily 50-50 seats.
Precisely. The true measure of the reform's success lies in that shift from near-zero incumbent turnover to actual electoral competition. The fact that an incumbent can now be defeated, that there's accountability, that was the core problem the reforms addressed, even if they couldn't completely change the state's underlying political demographics.
Okay, that clarifies things. But
Yeah.
just when you thought California had found a relatively stable, fair way forward, a new challenge has popped up. And this one isn't about internal state politics, is it?
No, this is quite different. The integrity of California's whole voter-approved redistricting system is now facing, arguably, its most significant challenge yet. And it's stemming not from some internal failing, but from a national political conflict.
Okay. What are we talking about?
We're talking about the Election Rigging Response Act. That's a legislative package proposed by Governor Gavin Newsom and Democratic leaders. It's also known as Proposition 50 for the upcoming November special election.
Election Rigging Response Act. That's a strong title. What's the context here?
It's essentially a tit-for-tat strategy. That's how many are describing it.
Tit for tat.
Yeah, it's framed as a direct response to Republican-led redistricting efforts in other states, particularly Texas, which have created maps seen as heavily gerrymandered to favor Republicans. So the stated aim of Prop 50 is to allow California Democrats to potentially gain up to 5 additional congressional seats here, specifically to offset potential Republican gains from those maps elsewhere. Supporters frame it as a necessary defense of democracy against a, quote, Trump-driven partisan power grab nationally.
Wow. So what exactly would Proposition 50 do to California's independent commission? And what's the timeline?
Okay, so the legislative proposal, which was passed by the Democratic supermajority in the state legislature, it would temporarily override the CCRC.
Override the Citizens Commission?
Temporarily, yes. It would return map drawing authority to the legislature, but only for the 2026, 2028, and 2030 election cycles.
So for the rest of this decade, basically.
Essentially. Now, this move immediately drew a legal challenge from Republican lawmakers. They filed an emergency petition with the California Supreme Court, arguing it violated the state constitution's 30-day public review rule for legislation.
And what happened with that?
Well, the court denied their request for an immediate stay, meaning the measure stays on track for the November ballot. But crucially, the court did not rule on the underlying constitutional merits of the plan itself. So further legal challenges seem pretty likely down the road.
Okay, so this is a huge potential rollback, even if temporary. What are the compelling arguments on both sides that, you, our listener, should be thinking about as this unfolds?
Yeah, zooming out, this political and legal battle has really exposed a deep divide. Proponents, like Governor Newsom and other Democratic leaders, argue this Election Rigging Response Act is a temporary, reactive measure. It's about fighting fire with fire, as they put it.
Right.
They insist California can't just stand by while other states, they argue, undermine democracy through extreme gerrymandering. They say the plan is necessary to, quote, protect our democracy and our future. And they emphasize that the voters will get the final say in November.
Okay, that's the for argument. What about the against?
Well, the opposition isn't just Republicans, though they've certainly lambasted the plan, calling it an unconstitutional power grab, and even a masterclass in corruption.
Strong words.
Very. But a particularly powerful critic is former Republican Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Ah, the architect of the original commission reforms.
Exactly. He's forcefully denounced the plan. He argues that restoring partisan control over map drawing violates both reform ideals and democratic norms. He's even launched a campaign to defeat the measure, arguing famously that California should not go into a stinking contest with a skunk.
Ah, okay.
And this powerful bipartisan opposition underscores a really critical point. The CCRC, the Independent Commission, it's become kind of an institutionalized and widely defended norm in California politics now.
So the fight isn't just partisan anymore.
It seems not entirely. It's also about protecting the integrity of the process itself, a process that voters explicitly chose to take out of the legislature's hands over a decade ago.
What does the public think? Is there polling on this?
Yeah, and the polling on Prop 50 reflects a really divided and, frankly, uncertain public. Some polls show supporters with a lead, others show significant opposition, and in almost all of them, a substantial chunk of voters are still undecided.
So it's really up in the air.
It really suggests the public is grappling with a difficult choice here. Do you prioritize a short-term political counterpunch on the national stage? Or do you defend the long-term integrity of your state's own hard-won redistricting reforms?
Wow, what a journey through California's redistricting landscape. We've really seen it all, haven't we? From that modern art gerrymandering and cynical bipartisan incumbent protection to this groundbreaking, transparent, citizen-led commission, and now this fascinating new battleground with Proposition 50 threatening to temporarily roll it all back.
Yeah.
It's really a testament to the fact that the fight for fair representation is, well, constantly evolving.
Indeed. This deep dive really highlights how that struggle between political self-interest and the ideals of representative democracy plays out. It's a larger national story, really, with California's history just serving as this intense microcosm.
Yeah.
The CCRC successfully insulated the process from internal political incentives, but it seems it can't fully protect it from these powerful external forces, like the national partisan warfare over who controls Congress. This new legislative proposal, Prop 50, it really represents a temporary but still direct return to the very model that voters so explicitly rejected.
So for you, our listener, here's maybe a thought to mull over as California grapples with Proposition 50 in this upcoming special election. Its decision won't just shape its own political future. It could potentially set a precedent for how other states might respond to national partisan gerrymandering. So what do you think is the greater priority? Defending the long-term integrity of a nonpartisan process that voters painstakingly built over decades, or taking a strategic short-term stand in a broader, messier national political war?
Hope you enjoyed this episode. Tune in again to make sense out of all the bills.